I'm really excited that you are all here today. Welcome to the information session for the Society of Fellows in Critical Bibliography. My name is Corinna Zeltsman. This year, I'm chairing our Diversity and Outreach Committee, and I teach at Georgia Southern University. I just wanted to very briefly, I'll tell you what we're kind of doing today, give you a little bit of chat orientation before we launch into our event. We are also being joined today by Barbara Heritage, who's the Associate Director and Curator of Collections at RBS, Rare Book School, and Tess Slominski, who's the Interim Administrative Director of the Society of Fellows, as well as a panel of 4 current fellows, some senior and some junior, who are going to talk and share some of their experiences with applying and with the fellowship itself. First, what we'd like to do, if you have questions that come up as things go, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll probably, just to kind of make sure we keep good time, we will save Q&A stuff for the end. There'll be about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A and conversation. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. First, very briefly, I'd like to introduce the society. We are a community of scholars. What is the Society of Fellows, you might be asking? A community of scholars who are really working to advance the study of texts, of images, and artifacts as material objects. And you can learn, there's going to be links coming in the chat that can link to web resources that you can follow. We have a mission, which is to foster capacious interdisciplinary scholarship, integrate methods of critical bibliography into our teaching and research, foster collegial conversations about historical and emerging media across disciplines and institutions, and share our knowledge with broader publics. And we're committed to creating a more accessible, inclusive, and diverse environment for the study of the material text. So you might be wondering what our program offers, the Junior Fellows Program. And just very kind of quick and dirty, you can find it much more detailed on the website. Fellows get the opportunity to take 2 courses at the Rare Book School, which is, you'll hear more about, I'm sure, from our fellows when we talk about that later. You have the opportunity to participate in various kinds of seminars on critical bibliography, and Barbara will talk more about what we're talking about when we use that term in a minute. And those seminars take place in the space of our orientation for new fellows, as well as annual meetings that take place. You also have access to funding to host a symposium of your own design related to critical bibliography. Some fellows co-organize symposia, some work on their own, and the sort of scope of themes and formats has been really broad. You also have funding to participate in these bibliographical field schools, where you travel to a location where you get to meet a whole range of people associated with the world of rare books and critical bibliography. And at the end of your tenure as a junior fellow, you can become a senior fellow, which kind of brings you into more decision-making roles within, taking a more active kind of leadership role within the society. So who are the current junior fellows, right? What are the kinds of folks working? What kind of materials are we working on? Where do we come from? This is a very text-heavy slide, but 28% are doctoral candidates at the time of their induction. More than 50% identify as BIPOC or Latinx, and 13% are primarily affiliated with the library. And as you can see from our sort of bullet points on the various geographic areas of research, the lenses through which people approach their topics, the degrees, the disciplines that people are coming from, it's a really wide-ranging group of folks. And we were really excited last year. We inducted the first fellow who's working on born digital materials as well. So when we think about material text, we're also thinking in those capacious terms. So I would like to turn it over to Barbara and Tess for their discussion of RBS as well.
Great, thanks, Corinna. Hi, everyone. My name's Barbara, and I'm just going to provide a very brief overview of Rare Book School, since some of you might not be familiar with it. So Rare Book School was first founded at Columbia University in 1983, And the idea was to basically provide hands-on education with bindings, manuscripts, printed books, paper, all these things, typography, for anyone who was interested. That was 5-day courses, intensive hands-on courses at Columbia, and that ran parallel to its School of Library Service. But when Columbia moved its program and closed its program, RBS transferred and transitioned down here to UVA, and we've been operating here since 1992. The school's largest mission is really to strengthen global communities of the book and to advance the study of cultural heritage. But as I've been saying, we do that through really intensive hands-on work. Some classes have as many as 500 objects to 600 objects in the classroom in 5 days. So we want people to be able to orient themselves to the object and learn how to read the object. And that really, in a nutshell, is our mission. And we're doing that in increasingly creative ways and with different communities of the book. And we've introduced a number of classes in the areas that Tess will be talking about later. So Rare Book School really is focusing on creating an inclusive, a respectful and welcoming environment that embraces a richly representation of human attributes, perspective, and disciplines. This work on building a more inclusive sense of Rare Book School and bibliography started years ago. And we created this statement of values and conduct that is published on our website. And we invite you to see that. As you can tell, bibliography is a method. It's not restricted to any particular discipline. So this really does allow for kinds of conversations you can have across fields in the humanities. And that's why it's very important for us to be able to provide a safe and welcoming environment and also to include all of these different perspectives. So it's really a wonderful way to engage on larger issues with other people you might not meet necessarily at conferences or in other venues. And that's one of the powerful things about Rare Book School and about this program. We do have an inclusive excellence plan that we published this year that offers a step-by-step view and account of how we are working day by day, month by month to make RBS more inclusive and equitable. And again, there's a link. We encourage you to check out that plan so you can see how we hold ourselves accountable. And I have to say, the Society of Fellows in Critical Bibliography is a very important partner in having conversations around equity and inclusion. So we really continue to grow together. And I think this is, one of the powerful things about having these relationships with our fellows. And this brings us to what is critical bibliography. So critical bibliography was a term created by W.W. Gregg back in 1912, and it was reintroduced by Michael Suarez as part of a grant that I co-authored with him and with Donna C. in 2012. And why critical bibliography? Well, we're not talking about works cited. We're not talking about just lists of books. We're talking about object-intensive investigation, and it's critical in 3 ways. Critical first, because it has to happen now. A lot of the skills for working on these documents are not being handed down from various communities. And a lot of that knowledge isn't necessarily recognized as knowledge. So we're looking for this kind of knowledge, and it can come from lots of communities. Paper making communities, communities of curators, librarians, other forms of expertise, all of that is critical to pass along. And it's important that we do that in the humanities. Critical too, because bibliography for a long time was siloed and thought of itself as apart from theory. There was this contest. And so what this is really trying to do is to interlace critique and hermeneutics with bibliographical practice. So object-oriented practice and theoretical practice together. And finally, critical in the sense that this isn't positivistic. It's interpretive. It's always interpretive, and we want to stress that there is this interpretive element to any bibliographical work. And I know that I'm probably talking quickly, so we would I'm sure that our fellows would love to talk to you more about this, and we'll be talking more about how they relate to bibliography and how their work with objects does that. So you will hear more for sure. And then RBS and the SoFCB. So Rare Book School is associated with the University of Virginia, has its own board of directors, and the SoFCB is a program of Rare Book School. So Rare Book School administers a grant from the Mellon Foundation that supports the society, but the society is run by its own officers. And so those officers are elected. They're very committed to representing the fellowship as a whole. And as you can tell, they're very much a part of this presentation and every aspect of the society. So we really have a collaborative relationship. The SoFCB and RBS staff work hand in hand. You can see more information in that link that's on the screen about the SoFCB and its current officers, who are incredible individuals. I encourage you to talk to them. On the RBS end of things, Tess Slominski, featured here, you're going to be hearing from her in just a minute, is our interim administrative director, and she's the main liaison. So when people apply for the fellowship, they can ask Tess questions about eligibility, about the process, and anything that we can answer, we can share with the society, and vice versa. All right, over to you, Tess.
Okay, so thanks, Barbara, and also Corinna for beating me to the chat and posting things in the chat. So one of the most exciting things about being a fellow in the Society of Fellows in Critical Bibliography is, of course, the classes. And so fellows take 2 courses during the fellowship, and one comes from the G series, and that means that it is a course in descriptive, analytical, or textual bibliography. And then the other one is an elective. And so there are a wide range of things to choose from. If you would like to see a, let's see, maybe Corinna can beat me to the text. Thank you again. If you want to look at the schedule, you can see what was offered in 2021. Now, the course offerings in 2022 will be a little different, and in some cases probably significantly different. And we're working on those now to figure out what courses will be offered. The program staff is hard at work behind the scenes. But just to let you know, some of the exciting courses that were offered in this past summer in 2021, we had a new course, Introduction to Audiovisual Archives Management, which is near and dear to my own heart, Black Bibliography, and then also a wildly popular class on the history of the book in China. So these are just 3 of the representative courses that RBS offers. So the question that's on everyone's minds, and I've already fielded several questions from some of y'all, is, am I eligible? So the criteria, of course, everybody's situation is different. So I encourage you to get in touch with me if you have a weird situation that you need more guidance on. But the basics are that you are in the early part of your career, you've received your terminal degree in the past 10 years, and we date that from the time the application is due, rather than this day right now, and that you're still in a junior position, you don't have tenure yet. If you are still a student and you are in a PhD program, you need to have advanced to candidacy. And if you are still in a library science or other kind of degree, you need to have finished that degree. You need to be based in an institution in the United States, or if you're an independent scholar, to be based in the United States. Able to commit to taking courses, and those courses almost always happen in the summers. So planning to commit to taking a week to take a class in 2022 and 2023. Also able to commit to going to an orientation in late May in 2022 in LA, if we can. And we are very, very excited about the idea of going to LA. It's going to be a great time. We just hope that COVID will let us do that. We're hoping that COVID will let us have nice things again. And then you can't be a current or previous member of RBS's full-time year-round staff. So sorry, Barbara. So if you have questions, please let me know. And how do you apply? Here's a link in the chat to the application, and you need to go through the RBS website to do that. You need to sign up. If you do not already have a MyRBS account, you'll need to sign up for that. It's a basically like signing up for a mailing list almost, but it's not a mailing list. And that will take you to the Interfolio application. There's more information on the website where you find the link to apply. So that is now in the chat. The RBS website is a little bit labyrinthine. And so we have a couple of slides here that help you get in. There are 2 doors into the web page that will take you to the application. One is, I found at first a little bit less obvious, that you would go to programs and then click on SoFCB in the banner. And then after that, click on Junior Fellows Program in the, I think it's in the first paragraph of prose. The other possibly more direct way of getting in is through admissions and awards, fellowships, and then it's right there as, I think it's the second option in the list there. So 2 doors in, and have fun.
Thank you so much, Tess and Barbara, for all that information. And you guys know you can always reach out to them to Tess through that email, rbsmellon@virginia.edu, with any specific questions. And now let's introduce the fellows. I will basically turn it over to them to, maybe we could go in alphabetical order, to just say who you are, and in a minute, in a word, what you're working on.
All right, so I guess it's, I'm coming first. So my name is Stéphanie Delamaire. I'm the Associate Curator of Fine Arts at Winterthur Museum, Garden and Library. You don't see the garden and library part, but the library is important too. And basically, I'm the curator of the collection of prints and paintings, mostly works on paper, are mostly printed material, but not only. And I'm also an affiliated assistant professor in the Winterthur program in American material culture. And it's kind of where I think that materiality comes in connection with the Rare Book School and the Society. So I'm a trained art historian, and I really, as I was telling Barbara a couple of minutes ago, the first time I heard the term critical bibliography, I was at the library company in Philadelphia working on my dissertation that included an important section on the relationship between prints and paintings. And I was looking at prints in books. And I'm definitely a material culture oriented person. I've always been very interested in how we take into account the material aspect of these prints into the way that they make meanings. And it's like basically through conversation that I heard about this program and how I got involved.
Hi everyone, I'm Santiago Muñoz. I'm a assistant professor of Indigenous Studies at the University of Connecticut in the Department of History and in Literature, Cultures, and Languages. I've been a fellow since 2015, and I work on Indigenous history in South America in the 16th, 17th century. The interactions between indigenous peoples and the Spanish administration, Spanish Empire in general, and specifically how paper technology is mediated in those interactions. So great to see so many people involved today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Tsang. I am the Cuban Heritage Collection Librarian and Curator of Latin American Collections here at the University of Miami. I am an anthropologist by training. My work is on the history of the Chinese as indentured workers going to Cuba in the 19th century. And I have been a fellow with the Rare Book School, I think since 2018. And I've also had the privilege of working in various capacities while there. And I would start out by saying that being a fellow, taking the courses, but also having this network of people has really helped me to think about my own work in a different way with regards to critical bibliography. So one of the projects that I have been working on and developed with the help of Fellows is looking at the production and circulation of ritual texts or manuals by Afro-Cuban religious practitioners from the beginning of the 20th century to today.
Good morning. My name is Xiaoyu. I'm a PhD candidate at UC Berkeley. So I work on modern Chinese literature, typography, and book history. And I'm a literary scholar, I guess, by training. And I'm kind of interested in the things that are, we tend to take for granted: punctuation, page layout, paper design, the texture of the book. So it's been kind of like a struggle for me so far to really articulate what I'm working on to people in my field. So I've really learned a lot from everyone here in the Real Book School, and sort of like finding ways to also engage with this emerging field, the critical bibliography, and imagining ways to engage it. Yeah. And I just came to the community this year, so I still have a lot to learn, and a lot to learn from my the senior fellows here as well. Yes.
And we're also appreciating your contributions. Even though you're junior fellow, you're still an integral contributor to the way our society is run as well. So let's jump into questions. So we started, talking about this. Xiaoyu and Martin have already talked a little bit about your experience as a fellow has been. What have been sort of big takeaways that you've gotten from the experience? Whoever wants to jump in, please feel free.
Go ahead, Santiago.
You want to run through a little round? Start it off, Stéphanie.
For me, I really, the community, it's really an interdisciplinary community. As I mentioned, I'm a trained art historian, so I'm really, originally I was really preoccupied with images and thinking about them in material ways, but sort of in isolation from the rest. I mean, especially images on paper. And one of the things that was very important to me was the opportunity during the schools, like basically the trips, meeting other people who were, because at the end of the day, I was working with book-like material. And basically the opportunity to meet people who were also looking at book-like material, but from a different perspective, and hearing about their work and helped me think about mine in different ways. And since I'm also in a position where I constantly engage people with objects who also come from different perspectives, it's been an incredibly rich experience in that sense. So like the community is really something that has been really important.
Yeah, so I would second that. The community is a great aspect of RBS and the Society of Fellows. It's definitely has been one of the aspects that have contributed more to my work. Just being in touch with such a diverse network of people who are working on so many different angles and areas, but are yet articulated by similar kinds of questions and theoretical reference. And so the community is really important, I guess. I had a very particular experience as a fellow, because before my orientation, there was a field school that was advertised to Oxford because Michael Suarez was giving an important lecture there. And so I joined for a field school before even having an orientation. And it was incredible. My first time there, I got to hear these wonderful lectures, but also visit some of the very obscure college libraries and collections that weren't open to the public, but we got to see them and talk to their curators and the people in charge. And at the Bodleian Library, I found the earliest the earliest catechism in Muisca language. And it was the earliest Muisca language imprint we had record of at all. And so I was amazed by this. And had a bunch of questions that I didn't know how to answer, and I could only answer them afterwards that summer when I took the course Printed Books to 1800 with David Weitzel. And so I'm not gonna go extend a lot, but it's been just remarkable what I've learned in the courses as well. I took textual mobilities with Roger Chartier and John Pollock, and also critical bibliography with Michael. And I had another amazing opportunity to co-organize a conference with the amazing Corinna Zeltsman here on paper technologies, trying to think about bringing together scholars, inviting them to think about the paper technologies that were at the heart of both imperial formations and states, and how through paper states and empires got to learn about their communities, right, and their vassals and their citizens. And so it was very interesting. And I guess I didn't see myself as someone working in the history of the book. I had this many questions about the way paper participated in colonial formations. And in that way, I think this expanded view of critical bibliography has really shaped my own approach to both indigenous people's history and the instruments that allowed empires to work. So that's all.
I would definitely say that some of my initial experiences when I came to Virginia, when Rare Book School was based in the library there, it was kind of entering into a secret society in the best kind of way. Of a huge number of like-minded people that not that we're all studying or interested in the same kind of thing, but we'll kind of have this shared passion, and we're all trying to carve or even find our niche within this kind of large landscape of what critical bibliography means to each one of us. And I really appreciate this sort of open, continuing defining of critical bibliography. And I think one of the best strengths of being a fellow is that you become aware of this kind of nature of transdiscipline, if you will. It's not interdisciplinary for me, it's transdiscipline. And you have amazing conversations, and then you also have the potential to collaborate, or at least even to sound off and to explore new avenues. So that was definitely one of the biggest takeaways from my continuing relationship as a fellow.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo everyone, and it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm probably the only cohort here that's the sort of a COVID virtual cohort. So I took my first RBS class this summer virtually, the history of the book in China, and it still went really well. Like, even though it was virtual, even though we didn't get to really touch and smell the stuff, but it was still like we developed the course is all about sort of. In my interpretation, it's really developing some kind of intense and sustained attention to the details, the formats, and how to describe them, how to historicize them, and also at the end of the day, also thinking about them even comparatively, and thinking how that might relate to other fields or other book traditions. So it's been a really enriching experience, and what I personally took away from that experience, and also from the orientation, it was really a pleasure to hear about everyone's research and see all kinds of connections, and see how inclusive, but also how full of potentials this field is. It is really, as everyone has said, I think it's in the still in the formation stage, and that's great precisely because we can all add to it. And also, I think the course was also eye-opening. Like I feel really happy to really share the virtual classroom with graduate students, scholars, senior scholars, librarians, curators, but also collectors. And people are asking questions. These questions, I never thought of them before, but they're just really leading me. They were just really leading me to think about maybe even new topics for my own research. So yeah, it's been wonderful and really eye-opening. Yeah.
So what kinds of advice would you offer to those who are just starting the application process, or just about it in general?
Would you like us to just volunteer, or?
It's up to you. I will let you, maybe we should just do rounds, no? Keep it going the same way. Stéphanie, you're up.
Okay. So I think I was, I don't even remember I mean, you know, it's COVID time, right? So time has a weird dimension of its own at this time. Anyways, my advice about the application process, I would say, at the end of the day, it's more an application process that has to do with your process and your approach to material than, let's say, don't be afraid by the field, what critical bibliography might be. That's one important thing. At the end of the day, it's about an approach that's really an approach to research or to inquiry that's about asking questions about objects that are book-like, right? And maybe if you have, I mean, but that's kind of any application process, right? If you have an opportunity to have someone who is not in the field to read it, to make sure that you communicate clearly your goals with the fellowship.
Great, good suggestion, Stéphanie. I think I would say you should really study the components of the fellowship and think how the program could contribute to your own perspective, and how your perspective can also contribute to the advancement of critical bibliography. So you've heard here some of the principles and aims of the fellowship, to have this capacious idea of and engagement with material objects and texts in different contexts. I think it would be great for you to really highlight your need for this, for developing this material perspective on texts and other kinds of objects, and to make it clear why you need this skill set and how you'd use it to perhaps advance the field towards a new, well, in a specific horizon. I guess I would also suggest that it might be a little bit, the application is a lot of work, right? You need to write several essays, and so I think get started early is a good advice, and reach out to Tess, and if you need some help, or you need clarifications of certain aspects, reach out for help in the society to one of the fellows or to Tess as well.
I definitely underline everything that Santiago said, especially about what you feel you can contribute to the fields, or that you'd like to see and push boundaries, against or further. Don't try and emulate or don't try and write materials that you think the Rare Book School would be interested in, but be on your authentic self, show yourself, as in show your interests, no matter if you think that they are relevant or closely aligned with the Rare Book School, because I don't think that the Rare Book School are looking for a certain type of people or a certain type of research or a certain type of production. So you have interests, you have skills, you have an identity and a characteristic that is unique, and let that shine in your materials as well. Even, go for it, just go for it. Say, this is me, this is what I'm interested in, and I think I can find some touch points, but I'd also like to make more touch points within this field in this way forward. And look at the diversity of fellows that, past and present fellows. Perhaps try and reach out if you know any of them, or if I'm sure I'd be welcome to have a chat with anybody as well, and just to get a different type of perspective, but just go for it.
Yeah, I think actually I don't really have that much to add. I guess just to share my personal experience, I think initially it was my advisor who sent me the link to this fellowship, and I was like, I don't see the connection there back then. I was like, oh, I work I thought I would work on print culture, but I was also thinking, but compared to scholars of prehistory, I'm also not just focused on things about, say, modes of circulation or production. I'm interested in more detailed aspects of the material object. So I was having trouble really formulating who I am and how what's my connection to the fellowship. But I guess what I wanted to say is just don't question yourself, because if you are brought to attention this fellowship, if you are already interested in learning more about it, it's very likely you are just doing, you are part of it. And also just to echo what everyone has said, I think it's probably useful, or not just for the application process, also just for your for our own sort of intellectual growth, to think about how our work can connect with other fields, scholars of other fields, but also with librarians, curators, like thinking about how what are some collaboration, some possible collaboration there. Yeah.
So what is it like to take RBS courses as a fellow? And I'll just comment that we're running a little behind schedule. So if you could keep your answers succinct, I think we'd be appreciative.
Right. So I guess I'll start. So I, again, one of the things that in the course of the fellowship, you take 2 courses, right? One of them is a G course. The one that I took, we were only fellows in that class, and I don't know if it's still the case in the current, in the way that the fellowship is organized. But of course, an opportunity to engage with material and methods with a group of like-minded people, but at the same time who are coming at it from very different backgrounds, different perspectives, and they're all interested. Their own project is very likely to be on something entirely different from what you're working on. That I found also is a particularly rich experience, to be with the materials themselves, as you sort of fine-tune your eyes in many ways, as much as the connection between your eyes and your brain, and how those connections are actually made because you're in this group of people who are asking different questions with the materials in front of you. So I don't know, so what's up in next year in terms of and what happens when it's virtual, right? Because that's another, so maybe the other ones are going to have answers to that question.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Xiaoyu will say about online courses. I've never had an online course. It was I would describe it as an intensive, immersive experience. The RBS courses, they were usually, well, the ones I took were a week, were week long. So you'd be I think well, you start with and they have well, long days that involve different types of activities, discussion, but also hands-on training related to the course you're taking. So RBS has this whole amazing, really amazing equipment that allows you to see, well, how specific presses worked, or how to what are the equipment to make paper, right, or lithographies, or it has really an amazing hands-on set. Well, I would go say component to it. So this the courses, it's a long day in which you switch between different activities. You usually need to prepare all your reading beforehand, because it's, as I said, it's just 1 week, and then discussions will be mixed with other types of activities. So by the end of the day, you're just probably just meeting some of your classmates and other fellows, and if it's in person, just have a drink and dinner, and probably want to just rest to prepare for the following day. But it's I think it usually is very different from other academic courses that are just theoretical. So I would highlight the combination between the practical and the more theoretical angle.
Yeah, absolutely. The in-person classes are both immersive and full on, like the days are full on, but in the best way. Very supportive, small classrooms sizes, and incredibly interesting. I did recently take the History of the Artist book from 1950s to the present, which online, which is inherently a very sort of tactile, you want to touch the materials. However, it translated very well to online, actually, given the length of times and the amount of information that is imparted or shared. It actually works without too much detriment. And we even managed to do a hands-on component where we created a risograph zine collaboratively across the airwaves, and then that was printed in New York and sent to us afterwards. So.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, so I also feel, I mean, I don't really have something to compare with. I've never taken in-person RBS courses before, so I only, I'm the virtual cohort. But I do think, just to add to what everyone has said, even though I also really long for the in-person experience, I still found maybe the virtual class was still a very useful and enriching experience, in the sense that, for example, if I were to teach a course somehow using materials from book history, how do I design that course? Especially if the local library does not have the collection, and I'm not rich enough to have everything. So I think how to use digital materials to get it through is also a very good learning experience. So I think I also observe and learn a lot from just the format of that as well.
So I think that Santiago and Martin sort of spoke to this in their earlier comments about how participating in the society has informed, their research, teaching and professional activities. But I'm wondering if maybe Stéphanie and Xiaoyu want to weigh in on this, or about, obviously, Xiaoyu, you're just starting. So how do you think it might, shape your future goals and plans/projects? go ahead.
Oh, okay. So should I go ahead or Stephanie? Oh, yes. Yeah, I just said like something about digital materials, but I guess one thing the other thing I was inspired just by the course I took, the history of the book in China, was also, it's not just about China, it's also about a regional book culture in a global book history. So how to put Chinese book history in East Asia, like this larger East Asian context, but also in a larger global context. So I guess if in the future I were to teach an introductory course on, I don't know, Chinese civilization, or I'm just making it up, or things like that, or maybe even something about East Asian civilizations, then I can probably think about how to also make it comparative, make it thinking about all kinds of interactions between regional book cultures and global book cultures. That's my ambition, but I need more training to do that. And also I realize I need to learn Korean harder. Yes, so that's just something I learned from this process. Yes.
You're muted, Stephanie.
I realize that it's popping up on my screen. I would say, so am I teaching, so I'm in a sort of a teaching and curatorial position, and I really got there, I think, because of RBS, in a sense that I think I was someone as a graduate student who, you know, sort of needed the material component of it, and it was not necessarily really there as much as I would have liked it in my graduate education, and I found it at RBS, and I'm now applying it to this field that's called material culture. So it has had a huge impact on my professional career, and on projects that I'm currently developing, in a sense that as a curator, we for example, we received a gift of a manuscript, like an illuminated manuscript of the late 18th century, done near Lancaster area in Pennsylvania. And I immediately thought about, like, so, and I immediately thought, well, what are the ways I could actually do something with this object? And I turned to the Rare Book School and the Society of Fellows as a community to see what kind of project had been done with similar material, and it's my current project. That's my current big project, for example. And again, it's a book, it's a series of images, it's a series of text, it's a manuscript, it's paintings, and it's all the kind of stuff that I think, because of that community and because of the experience of the fellowship, I can turn it into a project that, you know, I received a huge grant for it, and this has been, I don't think I would have done it without the fellowship.
Martin, I know you're working in libraries. Do you want to chime in about librarianship, or Santiago, do you want to talk about teaching? I don't know, if just for a minute before we turn it over to Q&A.
Yeah, it's just informed every aspect of it, especially the physicality, the materiality of the various forms of book. It's given me a greater vocabulary and vernacular to share with my students.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I think it's informed the way I teach, just because even in indigenous studies and colonial Latin America, that are the fields I teach in, I think I've just found it's different if students have a learning experience through objects, if they get to sometimes when you teach the Incas, for example, it's difficult to think, to relate to their lifestyle, right, and their context and their world. But if you pull up a quipu, the text, well, the system of knotted chords they use to inscribe information in, it'll definitely create a puzzle in students' minds, right? And I feel like this kind of object-oriented approach is really exciting for teaching in general, any subject.
Thank you all so much. What questions do folks in the audience have? We have a few minutes remaining, and you might want to ask a follow-up, either practical, but feel free to be philosophical. You can use the raise hand function or drop it in the chat.
Looks like there's a question in the chat right now.
I missed it. The fellowship involves an opportunity, Bryce asked, the fellowship involves an opportunity to organize a symposium on critical bibliography. Should we propose an initial idea for a symposium in the application? Who can field that?
Yes, you should. That's the short answer. I think it's a great idea to start thinking about all the components of the application. What courses would you like to take? Which really excite you? What would be the the seminar or the perspective you'd like to give to critical bibliography in relation to your specific field of study? And so and also, well, which field schools would you be interested in participating? So the field schools are harder, I guess, to define, because it depends on the offer you have for specific years. But it's I would definitely suggest you think about the type of event or seminar, conference you'd like to put together.
Yeah, I want to chime in also to add a piece of advice that I got years and years ago in a completely different context in applying for jobs, which is to envision yourself already doing the thing and to try to write your application from that perspective that you are already there. So I feel like that was some of the best advice I ever got for applications in general, and it certainly applies here.
And just to note the field school question, while the location might not be certain, to Santiago's point, to something we heard earlier from folks, if you have an interest in meeting people from other parts of the book world, if you want to meet collectors, if you want to meet the conservators, if you want to go to an auction house, this is the kind of thing you can indicate, because that's the kind of thing that will happen at any of these venues. So really talking about your interest in these intersections is helpful for your application.
Sorry, I'm muted again. I was going to chime in because that's something we haven't talked about much in terms of the fellowship, and it's the ability also to meet people who are working in different sectors that are not the academic sector. And it's also something that's important, I think, and enriching, in the sense that you have this opportunity to take classes with people who look at the same material, but not for the same reasons. And it also takes you out of the academic bubble, which is not necessarily, sometimes you don't want to be taken out of the academic bubble, but I think it's also an important enriching aspect of the fellowship.
I think, oh, great. Okay, so Minji was asking about catalogs. If my research is about medieval women in medicine, should I know what libraries and catalogs I might be using when I'm applying? Let me know if you need more information. I see what you mean. Like how, to what degree do you need to know the sort of landscape of your field in terms of like library resources and things like that? What do folks think? Someone is unmuted.
I think that you need to show that you know that you're basically on top of your sources, like you know what sources, like as any applications you have to do when you're in graduate school, right? Like you need to show that you are aware of your material, you're on top of your material. At the same time, I don't think it's necessary to say, oh, let's say in the collection of the Rare Book School, there is this manuscript that I want to see for my research, because that's not exactly the point of the fellowship. And correct me, Barbara, or Corinna, or anyone, if you think I'm wrong, right? But to me, since it's about really like more being exposed to to practicing a different method of approach. The collections of the library of the Rare Book School itself is not necessarily, it doesn't need to be like a super tight fit with your own research. Like you need to show that you know what you're talking about, but the experience at Rare Book School will be slightly different.
That's right, Stéphanie. It's how you apply it. So it is about method. And like you were saying, learning to see anew, looking with your eyes and kind of finding these new ways of seeing. So that approach is something that you can use on other kinds of objects. They don't have to be part of the RBS collection, but we're interested in how you see things right now. Like what approach are you taking right now?
Yeah, because in some ways you want to show that you are starting to see or that you're connecting these dots, right? But you need help to connect them further.
Just 2 words on that. You will eventually find those materials and sources and catalogs. You'll get there. But what the fellowship will allow you is to find so much more in addition to that.
I should just add that I think one of my other advice regarding the application is I think there's if you are too early in your career, if you just finished, if you're in a PhD, for instance, and you just finished courses but are not really sure about your project, it's probably not the best time to apply, but you might try to wait for a year. I'm curious to see what my other panelists say about this, but I think it's usually good to see you have your goal and the vision for your research at least a little bit more grounded, and so I would suggest you also think about the timing of when you apply if you are too early on.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to strongly encourage PhD candidates to apply, because I think it's really beneficial to be in these conversations when you're still sort of finishing the research. But obviously, like having a defined sort of sense of where you think your project is going and how you think it could benefit will really help the application for sure. Excellent. Any last questions? Because it's 3 o'clock, so I know folks might have places they need to be. You can always contact us through the email. If you have questions, feel free to be in touch with me or with other fellows. And since we're about to head off into our afternoon, if everyone wants to unmute themselves for a second, just say bye, so we have a sense of ourselves and some energy going off into our day.